Hello, this is John Aker, call sign Nomad. This is my YouTube channel. The top line of the splash screen is their YouTube is calling a handle, part of the URL to find this channel, youtube.com/@ John Aker, aviating author. And note the dots, the periods between the last four words. That forms the handle. This introduction is the first of more than a dozen videos that I generated that follow my autobiography, recollections, my life in and out of the military. And they will represent planes I flew during the 18 years of active flying status I was on during my 20-year military career as a United States Air Force pilot. I found software that runs in the computer flight simulator world, matching airplanes that I flew in real life. And I narrate them with a narrative stream of consciousness, stories of what was happening in my life during the times when I flew those airplanes. And, well, they're war stories, you know, of course. And in war stories, you have to be careful because the first liar ain't got a chance. You'll learn a little bit about computer flight simulators and videos, the equipment I use to get it done, and we'll have some fun. And check your six back there. I might be on your tail. Nomad is back. Let's take a look at the rest of this series.
Here's a listing of those videos I've got up here. If you look in the left-hand column, third one down is highlighted, and we're still at Bartow AB Florida. But we're moving on up to the T6G North American Texan, which in World War II was an advanced trainer. A lot more about that one when we get into the video that's built around the time I learned flying in that terrible T6 Texan. Hello, this is John Aker back again in the cockpit, call sign Nomad. Still 1956, and we're still at Bartow Air Base, but we have moved up to the terrible T6 Texan along a trainer. Let's take a look at the outside. There she is. I don't know what I'm doing here sitting on the end of the runway. 27 left at Bartow with the canopy closed. Let's open that canopy, because back in those days, it wasn't World War I with white scarves, but we flew with the canopy open up to about 2,000 feet. So we'll do that here today. The T6 is a continuation of primary flight training. Notice I still have the two data bars open in the upper left corner of the screen. So when I'm flying from an external view like this, I have altitude and airspeed indications. We're at Bartow and we're just a little over 100 feet elevation. So we're going to take a trip around the local area, and I'm going to tell you about some of the things that happened back in the day. Let's release the brakes, add some power, and add power smoothly, because at a 800 horsepower Wasp engine, like to pull your nose to the left, fly the tail off the ground at around 40 knots, 50 knots, airborne. Let's bring the gear up and take up any flaps we had. Okay, we're going to cruise locally. I'm talking about that torque on takeoff. A friend of mine, unfortunately, had a bad experience with torque. He was flying solo one day and he added power on takeoff too quickly. Torque got him, he got behind. He's veered left, he's headed for the boonies. And we had a lady tower operator on duty that day, and she got on the mic yelling at the top of her lungs, T6 on takeoff, T6 on takeoff, right rudder, right rudder, right rudder. Oh shit, it's too late now. Unfortunately, that was the beginning of the end of his flying career. Better to lose classmates like that than other classmates. Did lose one at Bartow in a different section. There's a lot of lakes down here. Central Florida. Okay, I'm going to take you up here to a little town of Winter Haven, which is where Pat and I lived while I was going through flight training at Bartow. Let's drop down a little bit. We'll go up here around 500 feet. I'm around 1,000 feet now. In Winter Haven, we lived in a garage apartment. It's because it was upstairs over a 2-car garage. It wasn't too bad. It's better sleeping outside with the mosquitoes. And this next story I'm going to tell you is actually happened when I was back flying the J3 Cub. We had 2 flight sessions in the morning, the early morning and the late morning period. As I recall, I had early morning, brought the plane back, turned it over, and a friend of mine climbed in for the second morning around. And a civilian on the ground, got the tail number of that airplane and claimed we were buzzing. I don't know whether somebody was buzzing or whether it just looked like it. Unfortunately, the civilian pegged the time right about the time it was between shifts, those two morning periods of flying. I know I didn't buzz downtown Winter Haven. And Finnis said he didn't buzz either. And since they couldn't prove conclusively who the culprit was, nobody got any punishment out of it. Okay, let's head northeast. Let's swing a little bit to the left here. This scenery is not all that much for what was really going on. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Get off course there. Okay. This lake that's just off the nose, we're going to cross that neck of land between the large lake on the left, that's Lake Howard, and the one off my nose is Lake Silver. And somewhere on this little neck of land between those 2 lakes is Avenue H, Winter Haven, Florida, the spot of our garage apartment. I don't see Pat down there, so let's head back down south. And I'm going to take you up to around 9,000 feet. We're currently at about 300 feet. Okay. And we'll climb into the cockpit here for a second. And notice that placard on the instrument panel. It says intentional spinning prohibited. Well, that's exactly what I'm going to do, because back in the day, we actually had to fly the airplane, demonstrate stalls to our instructor, and demonstrate spins. Okay, coming up on a couple thousand feet. Let's step out here, and it's time to close that old cockpit canopy. We had to demonstrate stalls. We also had to demonstrate proficiency in spin and a spin recovery, because a spin isn't much good unless you know how to recover. I'll kind of talk you through some of the points as we get up here, and then I'm going to demonstrate a spin. The T6 did have a reasonably clean spin. Remember I talked about the torque dragging nose to the left. With that in mind, the easiest direction to spin was to the left. So when we get up there, we're going to pull the nose up. And we're up to about 3,500 feet. And for some reason today, she's likes to act a little squirrely here. I guess it's all that torque I was talking about. We're about 4,000 feet. We're halfway there. Oh. Since we didn't carry oxygen, we were limited to 10,000 feet when we were out flying. So just to give myself a little extra margin, I said I'm going to go up to about 9,800 feet to start my spin, just in case I need a little extra room on the bottom. When we get up there, and we'll do a power off going into it, ease the throttle back to idle, bring the nose up, should stall out at around 60 miles an hour. When she shudders in the stall, stomp full left rudder, pull the stick back and clear it back to my lap. The nose will drop, and we'll try to count 2 turns. It'd be a lot easier if there were more section lines down in this part of the country to count those turns. 2 turns, time to initiate the recovery, which is full right rudder, opposite the direction of spin. When the spin stops and the nose is down, pop the stick forward. Let her make sure she's got flying airspeed, add some throttle, and bring the nose up. If you bring the nose up too quick, you may fall off into a secondary stall and spin the opposite direction. Not fun. Not something you want to do. Okay, how are we doing? We're up to about 6,000, and I'm just making S-turns down here as we head south to a practice area. And I'm actually going to be doing this a little closer to Bartow than you would in real life. But since when we fly in flight sim, we control the artificial intelligence airplanes, and we shouldn't run into anybody. Before we did any of these maneuvers, we were required to do 2 full 90-degree turns, checking for traffic, side to side, above and below. Here in the doing a spin, we don't want to fall on top of somebody. I don't think I mentioned earlier, this was a near all metal airplane. Everything was metal except for the control surfaces. They were still fabric covered airplane parts. Painted yellow so they could be seen in the air, not run into other people. And anytime later on when we got other airplanes flying out of Bartow, if somebody spun out in the dust, the cry was she yellow? The other 2 airplanes were silver. Whoa! See what happens when you don't pay attention to what you're doing? Okay, we're up to almost 8,000 feet. We're almost there. T6, we learned basic instrument flying. We actually had to take off under the hood in the back seat, which was a lot of fun with that torque kicking in. But I managed to get her airborne a few times with nothing but instruments in front of me. We had an intro to night flying. That was exciting. Actually, they had us did it on a couple of nights in a row, and lined up 8 or 10 airplanes in a row. First airplane was sitting on the takeoff position on the runway, active runway, and at official sundown, when everybody knows it's not dark, they waved him off, and the rest of us followed. Took off in about a minute intervals, flew a short pattern, spacing. Got back on the ground. When the last guy landed out of the string, it was fairly dark, so that was just a square filler. It was hardly night flying. Later on, we did have a night cross country. I was on my second instructor by then, and walking out to the airplane, I remember him saying, "Acre U, expletive deleted. Don't get me lost. I'm going to be asleep in the back seat." So I didn't get him lost. Well, we're up to 9,000. We can do without that extra 900 feet. And about 110 knots. We got any landmarks down there below the nose? Not much. We've got a little patch of lakes there and a bigger one out there that might work. It's hard to count turns when you're whirling around. Okay, let's get her trimmed up here. And the speed's down to 100. Bring the throttle to idle and bring the nose up. Try to keep her going straight until there's 60 and she's falling off. Let's give her full left rudder. There's 1, there's 2, full right rudder. Up the spin, nose forward, stick forward. And we got plenty of speed coming out. Okay, we started that at about 9,000 and we're just below 7,000, so we lost about 2,000 feet in the spin. Outside here now. Looking for a landmark down there. It's hard to use those lakes for landmarks. There's too many of them. Okay. There's Bartow in the front. Let's turn around the opposite direction here. Yeah, there's a big lake out there, way out in front. Let's try that one. Okay, we're going to start this at about 6,000 feet. And we'll see what it looks like from the outside. And we're down to about 90 knots, 90 miles an hour. Idle on the throttle, nose up. Stalled. Full left rudder, stick aft. 1, 2, right rudder. And 4,000 feet. So we lost about 2,000 feet in that. Okay. We're going to head back to Bartow. I guess the point of doing that would tell you that I talked to a lot of my classmates after that, and we got around to talking about solo spins, and there was hardly any of them that had done a solo spin. So I thought, I guess I was gutsier than the average bear. Okay. Before we get back into the pattern, I want to show you something here. We had the simulator is paused right now. And I want to bring up a JPEG of a page out of my checklist in the T6. There she is. This is the last page in there. I said we had 3 runways back in the day. We took off on 27, going that way. 2709, we had 1432 and 0523. And each had their own pattern entry. We flew 45 degrees to initial. Initial is runway heading, aimed at the runway. And as we come in over the field, you may see this runway is no longer open. They closed it and built a parallel to 0927. Back in the day in tail draggers, not very good in crosswinds, so they would put 2 or 3 runways at an airfield, so that landing you had minimal crosswind to get her on the ground. I'm going to talk to you also about, we will fly this pattern on 2-7. We'll come into midfield. At midfield, we'll do a 90 left to crosswind. We'll do another 90 left to downwind, 90 left to base, 90 left to final, and see if we can put her on the ground. Okay, let's slide that back over out of your way there. And here we are. Back in our sim. Hit that P for pause again. And we're coming down, we're down to about 3,000 feet. Let's open that canopy again. Not sure what that was. It might have been open the canopy so in case of an accident they could get the body out easier. Or it may just have been in case of a bailout. That was one less thing you had to do at low altitude. As we'd been on base for a while, new classes began to arrive and they were transitioning into the new aircraft. The Cub was replaced with the T-34 Mentor, single engine, tandem, two-seater. And the T6 was replaced by the T-28 Trojan. That meant we had 3 airplanes, all flying different traffic patterns. I just described what our pattern was. You had the T-34 Mentors flying a 45 to downwind base and final, more like a typical general aviation flight pattern, landing pattern. T-28s came in 45 to initial, on initial at the end of the runway, did a 360 pitch out, more like fighter aircraft do. So now what could possibly go wrong with that? To alleviate that situation, they said, well, we'll have 3 landing periods. I don't remember what they are. Let's say T6's got on the hour to 20 after. T-34's got 20 after to 20 till. T-28's got 20 till on the hour. And if you're out flying solo, woe to the student who missed his landing pattern, his traffic pattern time. That meant you had 40 minutes in the air to waste. It was non-productive as far as your wings. I don't know, we were darn careful that didn't happen to us. Okay, let's see if we can get set up for a traffic pattern. Really need to gain a little bit of altitude here. We should be about 1,500 feet for our initial approach. In that base leg turn, or then the turn to crosswind, we'll lose 500, go down to about 900 feet above the ground, and we should turn final at that. So we're on a 45 to the initial at this point in time. And we're about 1,400 feet above ground level. Let's make that 45-degree left turn. Not quite yet. We're going to take it in on 27 right. That diagonal runway you see sticking out real plain crossing the 2 is the old 1432 runway that's closed. Nope, that's it. That's inactive. It was 0523 that's closed. Flying from an external view is not the easiest way to fly a flight simulator. I do have visuals of what the airplane's doing, but I have to look up at those data bars in the corner to see what my altitude and airspeed are. We're about 110 knots at miles an hour. I got to think of T6 operated back in miles an hour. Okay, finally got her lined up here. And this ought to be about midfield. Take a little power off, do a 90-degree turn, and lose some altitude in this turn. And on crosswind. Okay, we're crosswind. We're checking right and left to see if there's any traffic coming. Shouldn't be, but you never know. Keep an eye out for those people who are trying to kill you. Okay. And let's turn downwind. Downwind is parallel to the runway, the opposite direction of landing. It's downwind because the wind's behind you. Okay, let's put some gear down and some flaps. Okay, we're turning on the base. Okay, we're on base leg now. Coming up to a turn, we extended our downwind a hair too far. And turned a little early for final. We got gear and flaps down. Yeah, about 90 miles an hour. And if everything comes together the way it's supposed to, we get her into a 3-point attitude. Touch the concrete and stall the airplane. Excuse me. Install the airplane all at the same time. Holding it off. I think they've got a lot more ground. Okay, a lot more ground effect built into this flight simulator that I remember in a T6. I don't remember being able to float like that. Okay. Keep the stick back. Don't want the tail to fly off the ground again. And let's taxi off. Taxi off the off active. Get out of the way. Probably another T6 coming down there ready to chew my tail off with his prop. Okay, we'll leave it parked here for a moment. Next time out, we'll be at Webb Air Force Base in Texas, West Texas, flying the T-33A Shooting Star single-engine jet trainer. I went on to graduate and get my certificate here at Bartow Air Base. Thought I'd seen the last of tail draggers, but there was one more that'd pop up in the future down the road. So see you at Webb. We'll try our hand at flying jets. Keep your head on a swivel and keep your eyes on your 6. I may be back there. This is a Nomad, calling it a day.
If you enjoyed some of this material, you might reach up there and click that like button. Want to come back, hit the subscribe to this channel. This is John Aker, call sign Nomad, flying flight simulators based on my career as a U.S. Air Force pilot.
They took the blue from the skies and a pretty girl's eyes and a touch of Old Glory's hue, and gave it to the men who proudly wear the U.S. Air Force blue. The U.S. Air Force blue. Oh, they are men with a dream on America's team. They're a rugged and ready crew, and you can bet your boots the world